Hello there, welcome back to my channel. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, and if you've been following along, that means STAAR testing is officially over. We took the math STAAR 2 days ago on Tuesday, and I wanted to bring you along with me today so that I could just kind of talk about the end of the year. We've got a lot of fun things coming up. Talk about what do we do with math after standardized testing. Sneak peek, we start to roll into 5th grade skills, and we're just gonna hang out for the day because now a lot of the stress is over since STAAR is done. Have I put my posters back up? No. Should I? Yes. Will I? Maybe. Stay tuned. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, real talk. I could choose to start off this vlog by talking about how insanely tired I am, inside and out, but I'm not gonna do that. I'll let you use your imagination. Instead, I actually wanna kick off this vlog with a story because I had a student who made me cry yesterday, although they were happy tears. In fact, one of my other students saw me cry and they're like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, they're happy tears, I promise." But I think it's a reminder that a lot of us could use this time of year. So while I'm sharing this so that I can document for myself these little moments, especially when it's such a hectic time of the year, I also feel like this will most likely resonate with someone, and I'm sure at least one person watching is like, "Oh, that's what I needed to hear." So this time of year, even though STAAR testing is now done, is still chaotic because now we're trying to cram in the last of our tests, and we're getting ready for House Olympics, which is our field day, and we have a field trip coming up, and just all of the end of the year things, which are fun, but it's a lot. And I had a moment yesterday where I was just reminded of those little things as teachers that we say and do that to us are fairly meaningless. We don't put a lot of stake in them. We just kind of say them and move on. But for our students, they can hold a lot of impact, and that can be a positive thing or a negative thing. Obviously, we hope that we have those moments where we impact them positively, but it's just something to keep in mind that those little things you say can really make a big difference for our students. I came in after lunch yesterday to a note on my desk from a student. Actually, I shouldn't say note, I should say letter, because this was like front and back, and proceeded to read it. The student was basically, thanking me for being their teacher, but the main bulk of the letter was saying how a couple of weeks ago, I guess at one point we were doing math work in our Learn books, and the student had been drawing on their book, and when they brought their book up to me to get checked, they were kind of hiding it because they thought that I would say something along the lines of like, "Hey, you shouldn't be doodling in class." But when I saw them hiding it, I said, "Don't hide your beautiful drawings." And the student said that, changed everything for me. Now I see myself as an artist, and I've been studying art, and they basically gave me all of these beautiful drawings that they have been doing in the weeks since. This was literally weeks ago, and the student's just now writing me a letter to tell me this. And they drew just stunning pictures of me. They drew me like super buff as a power lifter, which was adorable. But it was just that moment where I'm like, wow, that's something I just said off the cuff to a student in the moment, didn't think twice about it. But for that student, like, that has a huge impact on their self-confidence, how they see themselves. And those little things can just really, really make a difference in a student's life. So that's my glimmer that I wanted to start off with, because even though this time of year is hectic, we still have those little reminders of how meaningful our job is. And I just wanted to share that with you. But pivoting, today, I'm doing a class lunch bunch with my morning class, my homeroom class, because we filled our STAAR jar. Usually we pick out a reward in advance, but this time we filled the jar and then chose. And my class voted on doing a class lunch bunch with a treat. Now, we chose this on Monday, and we chose Thursday because we're like, ooh, it's a good way to kind of close out the week. We still have school tomorrow, but I had some students who weren't gonna be here, and if we're doing a class lunch bunch, I want as many students to be involved as possible.
Excuse me. I'm God.
And so lately, when my class has a lunch bunch with a treat as a reward, I like to bake them something from home, from scratch, with love. And then I also will get them some kind of a treat from like the grocery store. That way there's a little bit of variation. So I typically make cookies and I let my class vote on what kind of cookies. They were split between chocolate chip and M&M. So we went with chocolate chip and M&M in one cookie because why not? And then for their store-bought treat, I went with some variation because I couldn't make up my mind. They love donuts. Something about these kids, they just love donuts. So I got these like mini iced donuts and they're like unicorn because they're pink and blue. And then I also got these confetti mini muffins. That way they can choose. So they'll get a cookie, they can choose a mini donut or a mini muffin. And then I'd also mentioned donut holes, and a lot of them were like, oh yeah. So I got this thing of just chocolate donut holes, which everyone can have one of these if they would like. So that is the plan for today. And then to go along with that, at Walmart, this is the point of the year that we're in. I placed a Walmart order for delivery yesterday because I needed to save time going to the store. So this was more than I probably would have gotten at the store, but it's good because I was able to get some stuff in advance. I wanted just some mini plates, like small dessert plates. I think these are, I don't know, 6 or 7 inches in diameter, 6 7/75 of an inch. But I like to have these on hand for things like a class lunch bunch. And then I always keep coffee filters in my classroom. It's a great way to pass out like snacks and things, or if we're doing some kind of an investigation in science that involves food. Remember I did like the moon phases thing. A coffee filter is just a really inexpensive way to pass it out, but it has a little more structure than just like a napkin. So I stocked up on those, and while I was at it, I also stocked up on some items for an upcoming investigation. We did this last year. When we get to food webs, which should be the week after next, we create edible food webs. So we create like a pond area food web, and we use different food items to represent items in the food web. I just said the word items very often, but one of the items will be plants, and I usually use broccoli, but I'm gonna wait and get that closer to it. However, I did go ahead and get some bunny grams from Annie's. These represent the rabbits. I think last year I used the cheddar bunnies, but I saw these bunny grams. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. And then we have goldfish to represent a small fish. I also have Swedish fish, which I have at home. I need to bring them in. That will represent a larger fish. Sunflower kernels to represent seeds. I've got these gummy snakes to represent snakes. I also have gummy worms and gummy bears, which are in my cabinet, so I didn't need to buy those. And then frosted flakes, which represent decaying matter because it just looks like a bunch of dirt and whatnot. So went ahead and got those things, which is good because it's one less thing that I have to do moving forward. But that being said, let's move forward and talk about math, science, social studies, all that stuff coming up. So after this week, I believe there are 4 more weeks of school. In fact, I know there are 4 more weeks of school. The reason I know that is because my gym that I go to during the weekdays, one of the front desk workers is also a teacher. And whenever I walk in, he'll be like, 5 more Mondays or 4 more Mondays. And so I know that there are 4 weeks left. But the very last week of school is kind of wishy-washy because it's not a full week. Plus, there's just a lot of other things going on, and our grades are due the week before. So really, it's like 3 weeks of instruction left. Now, during that time, we have 2 more science and social studies tests that we have to get through, 2 more unit tests. The plan is to take one of those for both science and social studies tomorrow. So that means we will have 1 more unit for science, 1 more unit for social studies. Our last science unit is on producers, food webs, and fossils, and like fossil evidence and what it tells us about past environments. And then our final social studies unit is on modern Texas. Now, thankfully, my plans for the year in terms of like creating slides and everything are done, which I'm proud of myself for. But it's things like getting ready for the edible food web and all of those little things that I have to like collect materials for and whatnot. Ooh, today we have makerspace in science. I just remembered that. So tomorrow we're gonna try to quickly review, take our science test, review social studies, take our social studies test, but we also have study hall. So there's a chance that this might kind of blend into next week, but that should be okay because next week, it's a crazy week. We've got iReady testing, we have our final diagnostic test, but we're gonna spend all day Monday working on that because we have to have our data in for our student growth data trackers that we're doing. Y'all, it's so much. And then we have House Olympics on Wednesday, which is like our field day. So we're just gonna get through what we can get through. Now for math, we are actually taking our final unit test today. Our last unit is just getting ready for 5th grade math, but there is no test for it. So after today, starting tomorrow, Friday, we're gonna roll into some 5th grade math. And there's a little bit more flexibility with this because it's not necessarily aligned to Bluebonnet. We have some lessons that are provided on our scope and sequence that we have to get through, but then we also as a team go above and beyond and work on some of the other skills that they're gonna need for 5th grade that aren't necessarily in the plans. For example, prime and composite numbers, multiplying decimals, dividing decimals. So let me show you just a little bit behind the scenes of those lessons coming up and what that looks like. First, to help review for our final math test today, we did this wizard spell escape room yesterday. Usually most escape rooms I do are digital through Google Forms, but this one was a little different. Basically, there were task cards that I put around the room that they had to solve. So the number of minutes in 3 hours divided by the number of feet in 24 inches. So it was a lot of measurement conversion, which is what this final unit test is on. So I put these around the room. The idea was they would solve it, get an answer, scan the QR code, enter it into the form, and then if they were right, it would give them a secret word to put on their recording sheet. And it was kind of like a fill in the blank. So it was like spider and rat and candle wax and things like that. However, the QR codes were not working. The Google Forms wouldn't pull up. So I just pivoted and they had to come back and tell me their answer. And if they were right, I would give them the secret word. And then once they were done with their spell sheet, it went into this secret envelope, which, it's just a plastic folder, but it just made it that much more fun. It was like, cast your spell, and they would put it in the envelope. So I have a few students who are still finishing that, but even though to me, this didn't seem all that novel, it was just kind of it's something a little different, but it's not above and beyond. When I said to my students that we were doing this, they were like, oh, that's so much fun. And again, it's just that reminder of it doesn't take much to make things novel and fun and engaging for students. So as I mentioned, with our scope and sequence, we do have technically one more unit. It just doesn't have a unit test at the end. After that, these are the supplemental lessons that we go over with students to get them ready for 5th grade skills. So one of the first things we hit is prime and composite numbers. So I designed all of these lessons just from what I felt would be helpful for students. I wasn't necessarily following a lesson plan that I was given. So this kind of gives you an idea of how I approach my lessons. I like to keep a similar structure to our typical math lessons, but I was able to deviate a little bit. So for prime and composite numbers, I start with having them find the connection. So what do these things all have in common? They are all multiple groups of the object. And then we talk about the eggs are in packs of 12, the crayons are in packs of 24, pudding cups are packs of 4, and then the pieces of gum are in packs of 15. From there, we talk about multiples. So how could I represent 3 packs of eggs? Well, I could skip count 12, 24, 36. 2 packs of crayons would be 24, 48. You can, use repeated addition or you can skip count. And then we talk about multiples would be making the number bigger. So think skip counting. It's the product of a number and another number. So we find multiples of 4 by skip counting, multiples of 12. Then we talk about factors. So the multiple monster makes numbers bigger by multiplying them. The factor ninja chops them up and makes them smaller. Factors always come in pairs because those are the numbers you're multiplying together to get the product. I always teach them how to create a factor rainbow. So this would be connecting 1 and 24, 2 and 12. And then I also will teach them how to create a T-chart. So kind of 2 different strategies for finding factors. We'll practice that just on our whiteboard and I'll let them choose. They can make a factor rainbow or a T-chart. And then I always give this as just a little memory hook. So multiples keep going higher and higher. There's an infinite number of multiples. So multiples go up to the mountains, and then factors go down to the floor. Factors can only go down to the number 1. We will take notes. These notes are from my anchor charts pack that I have on TPT. But as I've mentioned before, I've been updating these so that they are fill in the blank. I don't have those available yet, but if you have previously purchased the product and you're interested in the fill in the blank option, just send me an email with your order ID and I can send that over to you. We will watch a little recap video on that I just put in from YouTube. We will play a Look It to review multiples and factors, and we're gonna play in accuracy where I don't care about their score. I just want them to be as accurate as possible. And then for some exploration, I'm gonna give them colored tiles, and they're gonna try to make rectangles using a certain number of tiles and figure out if they can make a rectangle or not. We'll make a list of ones that made rectangles and ones that didn't. Talk about what was special about the number 25. Well, it made a rectangle that was 5 by 5. Talk about some of those patterns. And then I will introduce the idea of prime and composite. So all of the numbers on the rectangle side are composite numbers. So a number that has more than 2 factors. The numbers on the no rectangle side are prime numbers. So they could only make basically a long, skinny rectangle that had 1 row or 1 column. From there, I'm gonna have them start sorting numbers as prime or composite. They can still use that rectangle strategy, but now I've introduced the concept of prime and composite. We're gonna, again, debrief, go over the exploration, talk about some of those patterns, introduce the idea that 2 is the only even prime number, and then the number 1 is technically not prime or composite, it's neither. Then we are gonna do a classify and color activity. So they're gonna color prime numbers, 1 color, composite numbers, another color. They're gonna fill in the chart starting with all the numbers that we tested today. So these are numbers we've already talked about, and they found extra prime and composite numbers. Then we're gonna pause there for the day because we're gonna come back to this. We're gonna go ahead and fill in our notes on prime and composite so that we have them for the next lesson. Watch another quick recap video on prime and composite numbers, and then have our final debrief and our final discussion. Then rolling into the second day of prime and composite, we're gonna do a warm-up where we find the factor pairs for some different numbers, either using a T-chart or the factor rainbows. We're gonna watch a Generation Genius that goes over prime and composite numbers. So again, just kind of refreshing what we covered the day before. And then they're gonna continue classifying the rest of the numbers on their chart as prime or composite. Then I teach them the little jingle of memorizing the first 10 prime numbers. So it's meet me at 2:35 at the 7-Eleven on 13th Street where 17 friends buy 19 Cokes for 23 cents, not 29. So it's just a way to remember those first 10 prime numbers. And then I usually have some kind of an incentive that if they can memorize the prime numbers, the first 25 between 1 and 100, by Friday they get to join me for a prime party. Then we're gonna do a digital escape room. I got this from Teachers Pay Teachers. It's all about finding factors. And then we have our debrief. So as you can see, I'm able to add in some more kind of what I would call quote unquote fun activities. It's just a little bit different, but it keeps that similar structure where we're doing a warm up, we're introducing vocabulary, we're taking notes, we're watching instructional videos, we're getting in practice, but I just have more flexibility with how I actually approach that. But first, we have to get through our math test today. Although I do feel like my students are motivated to get it done, even though they're drained, because we just took STAAR 2 days ago, and now it's like, all right, you got another math test. And then you're doing iReady on Monday. But they're good sports about it, and yesterday they took home their final workbooks for the year that we had for our Bluebonnet curriculum, and they were super excited. They're like, it's the final one. So I think we'll be okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and get ready for the day. On Thursdays, we have our team planning, so I need to just look at the agenda. I send the agenda out a week in advance. So basically on Thursdays when we finish our meeting, I go ahead and send out the agenda for the following week, and then I just update it as the week goes with any new information. So I need to just look that over, get that ready. I also need to update my study hall list so that I can tell students hey, here's what we're looking at for study hall tomorrow, and That way they know whether they're gonna most likely owe study hall or not, because it's based on missing assignments and where they're at for their iReady minutes. And hopefully today after the math test, they'll have time to get in extra iReady minutes if they need it. But that being said, I will check in with you at the end of the day. We'll chat about how everything went. End of the day check-in time. I'm happy to report our math test is done and overall went really well. As a little celebratory reward, I let each of my students pick out a sticker. So these are Punny Pals sticker pack from Amazon. I will link them for you, but they're just these super adorable little stickers. So for example, Nacho Average Student. This one says, terrific job. You make me so happy. We've got, whoa, talk about perfection. It's a puffer fish. And then the little cinnamon roll, you're on a roll. So just super adorable stickers. And these are the types of things that I usually have in my prize box, but I laid out a bunch on my back table, and as they turned in their scratch paper to me, I let them choose a sticker to celebrate. So that is done. And then our class lunch bunch went well. You know, I didn't even prompt them, I didn't ask, but I had several students during the lunch bunch, which I put on Magic School Bus usually during a lunch bunch. And since next week, we're gonna be talking about photosynthesis, I played the photosynthesis themed episode for Magic School Bus. It's the one where, is it Feet? What's her name? I don't know. The one girl turns into a beanstalk, but that was playing, and I had students who just turned to me and they were like, Mrs. Emerson, your cookies are really good. And I was like, oh, it makes me so happy. And they all agreed that it was their favorite treat out of all of them. So pat myself on the back. But speaking of photosynthesis, so for our investigation next week, this is one of the things we learned last year. There are certain investigations that you have to set up in advance. So our investigation next week involves radish plants. They chose radishes because they grow, A, very quickly, but then B, they're kind of hard to mess up. And so my team teacher, who kind of takes control of the science plants, had planted these radishes earlier this week. And I feel kind of silly, but I didn't realize that when radishes grow, they have this like kind of fuzzy look to them. But we have different plants. I actually have 4 of these because we're gonna have one that gets sunlight, water, and air. But then we're gonna have one that doesn't get sunlight, one that doesn't get water, and one that doesn't get air, and we're gonna compare them and observe them throughout the week next week. So I kind of briefed my students and let them know like, hey, this is, you know, what's coming. And then we had our makerspace today. And so I had some, oh, there's a fuzzy of some kind, but I had girls make a little radish out of pipe cleaners, which I thought was adorable, and then a little pumpkin. I just love seeing their creativity. But I've started to think ahead to the very end of the school year and things that I need to start prepping and doing. I already have the little things that I'm gonna make their end of the year gifts with. I'll feature that in a future video, but I am doing my class candy awards again. I've done this for several years in a row, but I'm starting to brainstorm which candies are gonna go with each student. So it's kind of fun today, like while they were taking their math test, I was just kind of like observing and trying to think about what I'm gonna pair with each student. And I wanna get those ready sooner rather than later so that I can start to get end of the year gifts put together, because it will be here before we know it. I mean, we've got 4 weeks left, but I've got students who aren't gonna be here the last week, or, you know, it's just crazy times. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this vlog, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Let me know if there's something specific you wanna see going into the end of the school year, because I can definitely include that. And I do read all of the comments. I know I don't get a chance to respond, but I do read through them and see them. So your feedback is always appreciated, and you watching to the end to be able to see this is appreciated. So as always, thank you for watching. I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I will catch you in the next one. Side note, I was wearing my Ember sweatshirt today, and it was so cute to see my students. They're like, wait, that's Ember on your sweatshirt. Yes, yes it is. All right, I'll see you in the next one.